Tune in.
Hey, you guys, this is Paris from the Diva Hustle Show. Today, our guest is Kansas Thomas. Kansas was an accountant in the federal government for 10 years when she realized one day out of nowhere her psych abilities had opened. How are you, Kansas?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So tell me about your background and how you became interested in intuition coaching.
Yeah, so like you were reading, my I well, backing up a little bit, we're all born psychic or intuitive. Intuitive might be the safer word for folks.
Right.
And even as adults, we all have moments where we get a feeling about something and go, "Ooh, I don't know if this is right." And then later on, it turns out to be true. Or we're
Mhm.
thinking of someone and then they call us at the same time on the phone. And most people go, "Oh, that's a coincidence." Well, really, we're getting all these intuitive messages, these intuitive heads up.
Mhm.
So when I was a girl, I would have intuitive experiences all the time, as a lot of people do. But it wasn't like the movie The Sixth Sense, where I didn't see dead people that took me on adventures or have precognitive dreams or premonitions. The way that my intuition showed up for me as a girl is, for example, my parents couldn't lie to me, so they tried to tell me about Santa Claus, and I'm like, like I just had this knowing. I just had this knowing of what you're saying doesn't even make sense to me,
Right.
and yet I could also see how much it meant to them that I believed this lie, which was the start of me people pleasing, which was a whole other thing.
Right.
And the other thing I could do is if I got really still, I could physically feel like where in our apartment my parents were. So I'd like to climb on things and be adventurous. And so as a little girl, I would just kind of get quiet and like feel in my body if my parents were close or if they had the idea to check on me, because I could sense if they were coming to check on me. And then I
Right.
would hurry up and be really good when they came to check on me. And then when they left, I would just do whatever I wanted. So
Right.
it's like moments like that when I was younger. And then as I got older, I kind of just disregarded stuff like that. And my people pleasing, still doing what my parents said, I wanted to go off and do something creative, be a writer. And they were like, no, how about you get a job with the government? Like, go to college, get a job with the government, like, have benefits. My parents didn't like each other. They got married for reasons. And so both of them were like, never have to rely on a person in your life. Like, do the, like, for my family, the dream is you get a stable job with health benefits, and that's about it. Like you have some kids, maybe some pets, stuff like that. So that's what I did. So instead of pursuing this creative side to me, it was like, all right, well, I will go ahead and I got an opportunity to get a scholarship for the connected with the federal government, and they
Mhm.
were like, but you got to be an accountant. And I hated math. Math is my worst subject. I was afraid of numbers. And my
Mhm.
parents are like, you're insane. You will do this. And so I went, okay. Because from an early age, I've learned this is how I need to make my parents happy. Because if they're happy, I'm happy.
Right.
And so that's what I did. And I got my job with the federal government. I went in very, very young, like right out of, I worked while I was in college for the federal government in accounting. And my total federal career was 15 years. But 10 years into my federal career, I noticed that I would have these things that would flash in my mind at my government job. And it was like, you get a ton of emails, right? Like you run a whole radio station. So, it's emails all day long.
Right.
And there would be certain ones that would stand out to me, or it was like, oh, I want to look at this one. I want to address this issue. Or I would get this hit like, I need to talk to so and so for seemingly no reason. And
Mhm.
then that would turn into like, oh, Candace, you did this at the right time. I was already a hard worker, but also there was this thing that just was always there. It was like, I feel like I want to do this. And
Mhm.
I thought I was just really smart. Like I really just thought I was brilliant. And it was like, yeah, okay. But I didn't understand that that was also a way my intuition was working. So it was
Mhm.
literally putting me in front of the right people at the right time with the right solutions for the challenges that they were having. And I rose up through the ranks in my federal career. And so
Okay.
at a very young age, I was at a high level position, like in my 20s. And then we all got transferred to New Mexico. I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay.
And people were told you either transfer to New Mexico or you're fired. And
Wow.
so it was way too much work for the people, the staff that they had at hand. And so tensions were really high. Like people were really uprooted and had to leave their families. It was a very stressful environment. And what started to happen is I was getting my joy and my purpose from pleasing others.
Mhm.
But it was so much, just so much of emotional, toxic environment where I couldn't please anyone. And especially when I became a supervisor, I became a supervisor and tried people pleasing, and it made me look like a liar. It made me look like I didn't know what I was talking about. It made me look like I didn't care. And so it went from everybody likes me to you are full of shit. I don't know if I can say cuss words, but it was
That's
like,
fine.
you
Yeah.
are like, who are you? You know, what are you doing? And that just broke me because I couldn't hide behind, I make other people happy. And then it really broke me in certain ways where it was like, oh, well, I don't even know who I am. Why am I even doing this job? I didn't even want to do this in the first place, even though I was making good money at the time. I bought a house by myself. I got a new car by myself. I was traveling all over the world. And I felt there was this huge hole inside of me. And yet this little thought, this little image, this feeling would come, and I could still do things. I could still function. And it got to the point where I started getting sick, and I would feel physically sick when I was in the office. And then I would go home and throw up and I would feel better. And my hit was to not go to the doctor. My hit was, I'm going to go get a psychic reading. Like, so the first time ever when I was 27, I got a psychic reading. And the psychics were like, oh yeah, it's because you're psychic and you're absorbing everyone's energy and you're trying to take responsibility for other folks. And I went, what are you talking about? How is it even possible that I'm psychic when I feel lost? I don't know who I am. I don't even know what I want to do. All I know is I don't want to do this. And they didn't really have an answer for that, you know? And the psychics were incredible. They were telling me the name of my cat. And at the time I was not on social media. So it's not like they could have looked me up anywhere. And my family, they're real skeptical of the internets. So they also weren't online, but they knew the name of like my dead grandma and like stuff around it was like, they were so accurate about things. And then when I went, oh, great. Well, what am I supposed to do? What do I do for work? And they're like, well, you could do a lot of things. You're very creative. I was like, it was very disappointing, you know? And so what I did with that information was kind of tried to ignore it. And I did everything else. So they told me to meditate, to connect in with myself. And meditation is just really clearing, not even clearing your mind, but really being honest and present with exactly what you're thinking and feeling. And so I just started meditating, and I wouldn't tell anyone because it was just too weird. When I was going to meditations on a regular basis, I went to a center and they're like, where are you going? And it's like, oh, you know, communication training. Like, I'm not telling anyone I'm meditating. And now it's not even that weird, but at the time to me, it was very, very weird. And then I just started noticing things I couldn't deny, where I'd be talking to someone and then suddenly I'd get an image in my head and I would just say what I was perceiving. And they go, oh my God, how did you know? And I couldn't just assume, oh, it's because I'm smart. And then it took a couple years, but finally I recognized, oh crap, I am psychic. What do I do with this? And so while I still had my federal job, I took training. I was in training for about 3 years for psychic and psychic mediumship. And that was mainly all I knew psychics did was you give people predictions or you connect with people who have died in the afterlife. So I trained in those two areas. And then I felt icky though, Paris, because people would come to me, and similar to how I was when those psychics knew all these other things about me. And I'm like, whatever you tell me, I will believe. So someone's like, hey, Candace, am I going to have a successful relationship? Am I going to have a successful career? How's my business going to do? And I would tune in and I could get an impression of, yeah, going to be successful, or no, it's not. And the feeling, because I'm still very sensitive, the feeling of someone giving me their power, of me being able to say, yes, you can have this, or no, you can't. And then they believe me, they will then make choices and decisions. It was too much. It was way too much. It didn't feel right. And when I tried to talk to other intuitive people, they're like, well, this is what it is. And I'm like, it can't be what it is. And then I had this epiphany. A woman came in and she had a boyfriend. And one of the things she said is, well, I want to know if I'm going to marry my current boyfriend. And I saw yes and I saw no at the same time. And then I freaked out because I'm like, this woman paid me money and I'm about to tell her maybe. She could have been at home for free for a maybe. But I went with, well, spirit is showing me both a yes and a no. And as I said that, I could see, oh, I feel like the thing that will help make it more of a yes is if you pursued your passion, because they're telling me you have work that you love doing and you have to do your work. She hadn't told me, but she told me then, well, yeah, we're in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but she'd gotten this, she was in a creative industry and she'd gotten an opportunity to go to New York. Like people wanted to hire her and she'd been so excited to go there. But then at the last minute, she freaked out about it and was like, no, I'm scared. And now I'm not going to go, but my boyfriend needs to marry me. Okay. So she was coming at it from a, like trying to hide behind it. You know what I mean? And so hearing that message was like, oh, yeah, I need to go ahead and do this thing. And that kind of just opened my eyes, because it was like, wait a minute. Like you understood that. And so I just kind of did a test where if people were like, hey, can this thing I want happen for me? Instead, I would switch the question to, what do they need to do to get what they want? That's what I would ask spirit instead. And there was always an answer. There was never like, they're here to learn a lesson about whatever, or that's not for them. There was always an answer about, this is the step to take to get what they want. More than that, Paris, when I told the person, hey, spirit's like, first step is this, 9 times out of 10, that person was like, oh, I had an idea to do that a week ago. Or yeah, I dreamt about that. Or, oh, I just saw something about that. And I'm like, oh, well, you already took the action? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, so there's a disconnect. Like, holy cow, everyone is super psychic for themselves. Maybe not for everyone else, but for themselves. We're all getting this guidance and information to get exactly what we want all the time. It's just very few of us understand that it's intuitive, because then people are like, is it intuition or imagination or whatever? So my mind was blown. And then I could start seeing, this is what I want to do. I don't want to do readings for people. I want to empower people, because we all have these abilities. And it's very interesting, because my super Christian clients will be like, Jesus put it on my heart too. My atheist clients will be like, it's just the perceptions, the vibe of the world, just picking up on, and people who fall in between, it's like, oh, well, I'm just getting this. It's from source. It's from creator. So it's the words I use might be triggering for folks, but just know that it doesn't matter. Like, whatever belief system that you have, it's okay. We all have the ability. We're born with it. I say we're hardwired to succeed when we trust and follow and allow or listen to our intuition, because it's like, it doesn't matter if you have GPS in your car if you leave the car in park. Like, you can see how to get there, but if you never put the car in drive, if you never pull out of the driveway, you're going to sit where you're at. Or someone can tow your car, but that might cost you a lot of money and take a lot of time and be really aggravating. Or, we can get behind the wheel, so to speak. And so so go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, so 10 years in, that's when I find out I'm psychic and I'm doing all this stuff. And then it took me another 4 years where I worked my doing intuitive coaching. And half of that was like 4 years total of working my business as a side hustle. So I was an accountant by day, psychic by night, and also weekends. And then I had enough business and clients, and people were seeing results that were amazing. Like the first client I had that was working in the way that I'm talking about now, of let's embrace your intuition. Her business was near bankruptcy, and then she started making consistent profit. And then she started getting invited to New York and was in magazines and all sorts of stuff. It was really, really cool. And then other people were having other types of so it was tangible in the world stuff. It wasn't just feel good, let's trust and believe and nothing happens. Like, people were actually using it and going next level with their stuff. It was amazing. And then I was able to leave my job in 2014 and work as an entrepreneur full time. So I've been full time entrepreneur since 2014, teaching people how to be intuitive.
And so how do you help people tap into into this ability that it could benefit their personal life and professional?
That's a really great question. And it's real easy, practical steps. And in the show notes, if there are show notes, I can include a link. I have a free guide already. So I'm going to say it, but people don't worry if you're listening in your car or whatever. It's like, there's a guide that you can get. It's just 5 pages long, but that's because the words are really big and has a lot of pictures. It's really, really easy. It's easy to tap into intuition. It's so easy that's why we ignore it.
Right.
So tapping into intuition, just think of all of your 5 senses plus thinking. So seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, feeling, and then also knowing. Intuition comes in the same way. So most people actually get intuitive hits through feeling, because they're too distracted in their minds all the time. So feeling into your body. And one of the easiest ways is when someone says something to you, just feel like your physical body will give you a reaction. And it could be anywhere. It doesn't have to be just a gut feeling. So for example, and this is going to sound really bizarre, I have a friend and she would never claim to be intuitive or psychic or anything. But ever since we were girls, her palm itches when she gets money. And
Okay.
so ever since we were girls, she's like, oh, my palm itches. I'm about to get some money. I don't know how that happened. If my palm itches, it's because I've touched poison ivy or something. It's not the same. Well,
Right.
and that's an extreme example, but for me, when I started my business, I had a bad investment. And before I agreed to this bad investment, it felt like there was a string pulling my stomach, like someone was trying to tug me along.
Mhm.
And I was like, I don't know what that means. That's an interesting physical sensation. And someone's pitching me this idea. I invested, lost so much money and also respect. It was horrible. And now, ever since then, if someone is lying to me or it's not in my highest and best, I feel the same, like a string pulling. Well, we have those interactions all the time. We get a physical sensation, and the physical sensation will be consistent. It doesn't last a whole lot of time. It's very instant. Like we perceive something and then physical sensation. And so people can try it right now with wherever you're listening, or if you're having conversations as someone's speaking to you, just listen. How is your physical body responding to it? So that's one of the ways. And there are other ways through, like, you can see things or hear things. Most people see and hear in their mind. And a lot of people have that voice that chatters to them and talks very mean to them. So it's not that voice. It actually does sound different. Intuition is short, like it's very succinct. It's never mean to you. It might not tell you what you want to hear, but it's just short, to the point, and